this evening, we are going to be focusing on the recently released Sonic the Hedgehog movie and going to ask, basically, did it do well? Did we enjoy it? Was it any good? Was it faithful to the character? And was the redesign worth the effort, pretty much? Did it make a difference? Because I think that's where we should start, right at the beginning, and how this movie originally came to our awareness, which was through a very, very painful looking trailer that I don't think anyone has forgotten. And I'm going to play for all you beautiful people on screen right now, just so you remember.
Oh no, don't subject us to this!
I put the two of them side by side.
I had not watched it at all. The only reason I even knew, because I knew the movie was happening, but the only reason I knew was simply because Twitter was like going insane about it.
Mhm.
I hadn't seen, so when I was seeing the still images, I was like, wait, you're kidding, right? Like,
Nope.
That's not like the case, right? And it was just kind of trippy. I was like, this is maybe one of the internet thing. But then I kept seeing it pop up and trending, and I'm like, oh shit, okay, so this is real.
Honestly, I knew about it. I think the first time I found out about it was that silhouette poster, like way back before the original trailer.
Oh.
And I remember seeing like the still images, like the promotional images that were leaked, and actually thinking to myself, okay, he doesn't look that bad in the sense that I anticipated something a lot worse. And then the trailer dropped, and I was like, well, fuck this. This is terrible. Put it away.
Wait, there you go. There's that beautiful face.
Oh goodness, it's even worse watching it back now that we know that that's not the finished result.
See, you know, it's funny that you say that, because looking at it now, I don't think it's that bad.
Oh.
I'm not saying it's like compared to what it is now to that. I'm not saying that obviously I would want that version, but I don't think that it's as bad. Now, the initial juxtaposition of it is probably just like really awful to like see him go there. But I think the way that the design was done, it's pretty much all there. The only thing that really gets changed is the coloring when it comes to like his face, and then obviously the exaggeration, which is for the better. But I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I just didn't think that it looked as awful. Like, his shoes look whack, but again, I think they just went a little too.
I feel like
weird real with it.
I feel like from certain angles, in certain shots, it's not as bad. But even if you don't consider the face, the proportions are all wrong.
Yeah,
it looks like a furry.
Out of place. Yeah.
It looks like a person dressed up in a Sonic furry suit. That's the easiest way I can describe it. It's like his entire body is just shaped like a human. And
yeah.
Yeah.
What I don't understand is, surely when they saw the trailer came out and they saw the negative reaction, they went back and changed everything. Were they not paying attention for like the 6 months up to that point, where everybody was reacting negatively to like the teaser posters and all that sort of stuff, and they didn't think maybe we should take this into consideration and actually work on it like now instead of later?
Then, like, even if you don't consider the 6 months prior to that, at no point has, like, I understand that there's a bit of creative license involved and you kind of have to make it your own, but at no point has he even looked remotely similar to that. I don't understand how you can look at any video game of his and go, yep, that's about what we're looking for, because it's just so far removed from what we know as the character.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the conspiracy theory comes in, because people just think this can't possibly be that can't be a good decision in any frame.
Well, I think with any kind of film, honestly, when it comes to stuff like that, like Keldrick's, like they didn't think that's what happened. I'm sure there was somebody that was trying to be like, hey, this might go one way or the other. But when it comes to stuff like that, when you get to such large holdings and corporations like that, there's only so much that you can really do to a certain degree. And then at that point, it had to basically like sink or swim on the trailer, right? If nobody says anything, if nobody, does anything, that it doesn't really matter. Because, I mean, frankly, I'm surprised, like Michael said earlier, that it's done as well as it's done. And the only reason why is because Sonic fans are so
Passionate.
forgiving and loyal that no matter how many times he gets messed up, right? Their words, not mine. They still go back for more. They still
guilty as charged.
I think part of that is because, like, I think a lot of us are just continuously holding out hope that the character will be redeemed no matter how many times he's been let down. You're just hoping for the best. So I think this was definitely a similar situation. I know I was going to say it regardless just because I love the character.
I was only intrigued just because of the change. I was like, okay, let's see if the change actually, happened and made it better than what it possibly could have. I'd like to see what the original movie of it would look like just so I could have a comparison. Because now I feel like we only have the trailer, right? And we don't see much else besides, like, obviously the scenes that it gives us. And I feel like if I had the full release, like how Snyder does his Snyder cuts or other people do their extended or theatrical versions, I'd love to see that and see, even if it's not the full thing, just to get an idea of really what the difference would have been and whether or not it would have been the, real saving grace is just that design.
Do you think it's still out there? Do you think this cut all still exists, or do you think it's probably like on the cutting room floor and gone?
Honestly, I would absolutely love it, and it's probably never going to happen.
It's just like the Snyder cut of Justice League.
I think it's there, but it's probably with films, depending on how it is. I don't think, believe it or not, I don't think that, as people believe, it's expensive to make films. And when it comes to having the physical reel, if they still have it, or even just the stuff, they're not just going to just delete all or whatever for it. There's obviously things that they still probably had to go back to and look at or whatever. So I'm sure it's somewhere, but whether or not it sees the light of day, I doubt it.
It would be a great thing to like mine later on down the line when they want to do like documentaries like Saving Sonic or something like that. And
I would love to see certain scenes in their original form. Like I said, I don't think it's ever going to happen because I don't think the studio ever wants to bring attention to that ever again. But
the original studio can't, the special effects studio can't, because unfortunately they went out of business. But
that's the unfortunate thing.
Which is a whole entire story unto itself. Here's the thing when you think about it, though. The movie ultimately was probably going to be pretty much the exact same movie, regardless of whether they changed him or not. I'm sure a few additional things were like moved around to make it work, but a lot of the existing scenes that we see with the actors were reacting to the original design and the original look, and the movie we got was pretty much the original vision that was intended. And the question, of course, here is the movie any good? So we just got a bunch of really long messages in the chat just now. Your timing is great, guys. Just throw out those multi-paragraph posts. Caldrick says, in the end, it was not only the passion and dedication of the fans who went out of their way to get the design changed, but also the studio and the people responsible for making this movie who listened to what the fans had to say. Not the other studios, Warner Brothers, hey, I know what he's referring to. He's referring to Birds of Prey, and I completely disagree. Birds of Prey is a very authentic story. to its original source material, and
I'm a fan, and I think that fans having control over certain properties is terrible. We
I
are horrible people that are never happy with anything. So as much as it might have been great that this is one of those things where we all banded together to, make this happen, 9 times out of 10, the mob of fans that do it aren't going to be happy either way. It's always going to be something because I love Sonic, and I thought it was okay, but it's not something that I'm going to be like, oh yeah, I totally need to see. It has renewed my faith in Sonic. It has no, it hasn't. It was exactly what I expected it to be, regardless of whether he looked like that or he looked like this. Does it make it maybe like easier to swallow and like visually maybe easier to see? Yeah, but it's, as you said, it's still the same thing. Nothing changed other than his look, which, if it's still the same movie, that means my problems with the movie would have existed back then and
the
now,
positives as well would have still been there.
The same good things are still there from the very beginning. It's nice to say that, but as fans, it's just, I'm not a fan of it when fans have that kind of input, only because it can get so overwhelming with any kind of media, whether it's movies or comics or video games, whatever. Fans can be so fickle and so utterly just unforgiving for stuff like that. And when we hamper creators to not be able to have the ability to kind of deviate in any kind of way, then we lose all sense of uniqueness or even artistic creativity.
The one example I like to go back to when people like complain about like authenticity and accuracy and stuff is Guardians of the Galaxy. And the only reason people like didn't react to like the fact that that's super inaccurate to the comic books, but nobody cared because nobody knew who they were.
Yeah.
So they just didn't get upset. They're like, Groot used to be able to talk, for instance. Right. And Yondo in the comics is a completely different character from a completely different reality, with like a fin that is the size of like a shark head, and comes from like the 34th century.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, the most important thing is to make a good product.
Yeah.
And the question is, was this a good product? So I'm going to let Pixie start out with her opinion on this film, because I expect
I'm outnumbered today.
I expect it may go downhill from here. So let's start at the
let's do a compliment sandwich.
Let's start at the top and go from there. So, actually, before we do that,
City Escape, just start from the top and run like hell.
Before we do that, Davis also made a post that they probably didn't even get that many scenes done yet before they decided to redesign. I hope they eventually let us see what was rendered at this point. Same here. I agree. Anyway, Pixie, what did you think of the film?
I mean, I've been pretty vocal about my opinions on Twitter and social media. I loved it. Now, I'm not going to pretend that it was the best movie in the world, and it wasn't in a lot of ways what I expected, but I find it very easy to sort of, and I know not everyone will agree with me on this, I find it very easy to manage my expectations based on what I'm seeing. So if I'm going to see a Tarantino film, I know what to expect. If I'm going to see a Marvel film, I know what to expect. And I knew that, one, this was a movie that everybody had their reservations about. Two, it's a video game adaptation, which up until now haven't gone very well.
That's an understatement.
So I, like everyone else, I set my expectations quite low. So I feel like that's part of the reason why I enjoyed it so much, because I was pleasantly surprised. But I, as a Sonic fan, went into this not necessarily looking for an amazing plot or a good message. I just wanted Sonic as a character to be as authentically Sonic as possible. And I feel like while there are issues with the plot and there are things to pick at in terms of it being quite tropey and cliche, I feel like the redesign helped with that because you look at the screen, you see Sonic, you're like, yes, you've pulled him from the video game, that works. And to Ben's voice work with the character pretty much made it for me because as a 90s kid, Ryan Drummond has always been like my Sonic Adventure, Sonic Heroes. So
there's a whole debate on its own. Who's the best Sonic?
Like, I'll be honest, whenever I heard of the casting, I was a little bit trepidatious because I thought, okay, this isn't what I know. But as soon as I heard his work and how he was delivering the lines, and it was just so effortless. And I thought, right, okay, there are issues with the plot here, but I really, really relate to Sonic. And I never thought I'd say I relate to a hedgehog, but I did. And
the first time for everything.
I honestly ended up feeling bad for the guy, which I didn't expect. So, as being as empathetic and sentimental as I am, that really, like, the tug on the heartstrings really got me too. And I found the comedy was there, but it wasn't so sort of memey that it was like insulting, if that makes sense. Yes, there was a fart joke, but it wasn't constant pop culture references.
Except for the floss dance.
Yeah,
as
okay,
Caldrick just pointed out, that I could have done without that in the movie.
True, but as I said, my enjoyment of the movie basically came down to Sonic as a character and how Ben portrayed him because his voice work was phenomenal, and I laughed throughout because of that. So, I mean, as I said, there are issues with the plot and the tropes, but I had a fun time. So
I will 100% agree with your observations of Ben Schwartz and his interpretation of Sonic. He did do a fantastic job, and he sounds like Sonic. I definitely can't fault him in that regard. Sonic is the one thing they got right in the Sonic movie. They didn't make him sound like Deadpool, let's put it that way.
Right.
So what about yourself, Chevy? What did you think of the film?
I mean, I liked it. I always have this like scale of like being really tepid when it comes. I didn't have any expectations because I mean I'm a Sonic fan, but like I said earlier, you know, like my knowledge really stops at like 2 and like Sonic and Knuckles, really, because I just haven't bothered to go that far just because, you know, I moved away from Genesis games after that, and you know I just went full force into my PlayStation fandom, so there wasn't any like room, I guess, at the time for it. What Caldrick says was what's really interesting, that he loved Jim Carrey. That's probably the worst part of the movie for me. I don't know about anybody else. It's not that I hate him, but I feel like there's just way too much of him. Like his scenes drag on way too long for me. And I don't know if that's just because I've gotten older and like his shtick just doesn't like meld with me anymore. I felt like he was just trying way too hard. And I understand that him being such a big name actor, there's not really a lot you can do. You know, that's kind of his whole thing. And that's kind of what you're getting him for, you know, to be absolutely over the top and be that kind of like personality for the character. But like for Dr. Robotnik, it just, I don't know, it didn't feel like it worked. And like there were some nice moments, you know, of, you know, just funny things and things that kind of like would have gone, but there's a lot of scenes that are just, for me, they just go on way too long for him. I felt like I was sharing too much time between him and Sonic, which is like what I'm there for, right? Versus, and I understand that that's, you know, the symbiotic relationship that they have, basically just like any other superhero movie or anything else where, you know, you have one and you have the other. But I don't know. I didn't want as much of it. I could see it happening, and then I'm just like, ugh, okay, like whatever. Especially because of the way that, spoiler territory for people,
Let's save spoilers until later. I want to separate them into their own separate
Okay.
thing. Is there any way you can
Yeah.
discuss it without spoiling?
Yeah, just once you get to where it is of how it gets to the end, it makes me question why they let some of those scenes drag on so much, because obviously there's more that can be set up in a better way. So it made me question it. I liked it. I'd say, like, if I had to like rate it or something, I'd probably give it a 6. It's not like terrible. I think as far as video game adaptations go, it's not like Super Mario Brothers or like Street Fighter or something along those lines. But I wouldn't.
I like Street Fighter because it's so terrible. Street Fighter is so bad it's good.
Oh, I don't hate, Street Fighter, but those are the comparisons that everybody uses about how completely not the same way it is, or
the thing
how
is, Street Fighter is so bad it's good, but
Yeah.
Super Mario Brothers is just bad.
Yeah, Super Mario
you can't
Brothers.
actually find anything really redeemable about the Super Mario Brothers movie, whereas Street Fighter is at least quotable.
I mean,
Of course.
but
Yeah.
I have a crush on John Leguizamo, so that's
Who?
probably why. For
Who?
the Super Mario Brothers movies, John Leguizamo. So
Who's he?
you're like, who's he?
I have no idea who that is. Who is that?
He's Luigi.
Oh, the guy. I have no idea who the actor who
Yeah.
played Luigi was.
Yeah, that's who it is. But as far as it went, I went in there. I wasn't disappointed. I was, happy, with what I was there. I was able to suspend, my brain for the night and just, enjoy it for what it was. The point that you guys brought up about the flaw stats, I don't have a problem with it, but the only thing that I had a problem with I understand it's like something that's not going to be paid attention to, is the amount of knowledge that he has and doesn't have about the real world and his situation, and it ping pongs back and forth so much in that movie that I'm just like, okay, so clearly 2 separate people made the decisions about what reference or whatever is going to be used and what we're not going to use, or what he's not going to understand, but they're not even like close to the same wavelength. So that kind of took me out a little bit. Even though I'm not there for the plot, it's still one of those things that just like really stood out to me, because there's not much else that's going on besides him. But yeah, it's not terrible. I wouldn't be rushing to go watch it again for sure. I think I need the break from Jim Carrey.
It's interesting that you say like you wouldn't go to see it again, because I think it was Teshi or was it Teshi who said that? Oh no, it was Davis who said that they've already seen it twice, and that
I'm
they
actually planning on seeing it again.
would
so.
love to see it again. I actually went to see Birds of Prey a second time with the lady, and she loved it. But actually, no, we'll get into my opinion in a moment.
Yeah, I never really watch, to be perfectly honest, I hardly ever watch movies more than once, like in theaters, unless it's something that I need to watch again, that I like. And if I need to watch it again, I'm watching it within like the same week. I'm not waiting like for a group of friends to go with or whatever, because I have no friends. But I don't go, like, if I really need to like go and sit through it again, I will do it almost immediately. But most of the time, I'd say a good like 85% of the movies that I watch, they don't make that cut. And that's not anything wrong with the movie. It's just I really have to have something that connects me to it for
real
me to
investment,
physically
yeah.
want to go pay the money to go watch it again. Like, I watched Birds of Prey 3 times for different reasons. I watched it the first time just to enjoy it, and then I watched the second time to catch everything I didn't, and then the third time was just for aesthetic purposes.
I generally don't. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go on.
I was just gonna say that I generally don't. As with anyone really, that I don't go and see a movie unless I really enjoy it. one fine example of that is Marvel. So I think the fact that I want to go and see this again is a testament to how much I enjoyed it. Because I'll be honest, I'm aware that there are issues with the movie, but this is one of those cinema going experiences that just brought the child out in me. I was sitting there, I was surrounded by children. I'm almost 30 and I just felt like a kid again. And I'm like, yes, this is completely rooted in nostalgia. Give me all of the references more, please. So I don't know. I think a lot of my enjoyment has to do with that and the fact that I just disconnected my brain for an hour and a half.
Interesting. So, I think this is probably the part that everybody is dreading, depending on their perspective. Oops, I had notifications turned on. Those shouldn't even be here. Go away, notifications. We do not belong in this stream. So the Sonic movie was a quick one, huh? It actually is a surprisingly short film. It only clocks in at 1 hour and 40 minutes. And that's surprisingly short for most modern films, but I do think in this case it was use the time you have, basically. Don't waste any more than what you've got. So
Yeah.
What did I think of the film? It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I didn't completely hate it, but I would not by any stretch ever want to watch it again. And I think that's the most generous way I could explain it.
I get that.
It was a very serviceable movie, and to me that's part of the problem. It's just serviceable. Every single 90% of the jokes were like Sonic does something really quickly, and that to me was like just wasted. But I didn't laugh that much on when I watched the film, and if I did, it wasn't when Sonic was on screen. It was honestly, it was actually when Jim Carrey was on screen, and I'm not even usually a fan of Jim Carrey's like over the top stupidness, but he's Robotnik. he really did embody the character, and there's some scenes there where he even like nails the voice down to the point where I could actually see him like doing the voice of the character in future material. I'll get into that more in the spoilers.
I agree. I mean, the thing about the character is you're never laughing with him. You're laughing at him.
Yeah. And he knows that.
Yeah, I think he nailed that absolutely.
Especially the dance scene in the Jeep, with the T-Rex and the head and that, and then the guy pops out with the coffee. The coffee that absolutely got a laugh out of me. That was. That was amazing. But the humans were the least interesting part of this film for me. It's just cameo Cyclops just did nothing for me. His entire like development was like completely bleh. It doesn't even make any sense. If you analyze like what his motive and eventual place where he ends up, and Tika Sumpter, if I'm pronouncing that right, who played the wife, Maddie Wachowski, I feel she was severely underused. I think she should have been in the movie a lot more.
I don't disagree. I'm just having a hard time trying to figure out where she would go, because to me this was very much like a play on the buddy cop genre.
But I feel like she should have been with them. I feel like the buddy cop thing is so played out. It's like that stopped being original in the 80s when it was popular, and I kind of feel like with a lot of these real world CGI movies, they take like 80s movie design and just throw the Smurfs in there, or Alvin and the Chipmunks, or Sonic, and just
Right.
they just don't really make an effort. I will say the second half of the movie I enjoyed a lot more than the first part. Once Sonic stopped sitting around and feeling sorry for himself and actually did some cool stuff and acted like this wisecracking smartass that I know from the games, it got a lot more interesting, especially when he actually started like doing like cool stuff in the action scenes. And
Yeah.
I would enjoy a sequel. I hope that if they make a sequel, it will focus more on the Sonic side of things than human side of stuff, because while I didn't find the stuff with Sonic particularly funny, his actual representation in the movie, other than being a bit too young for my liking, was pretty much perfect. They could
Right.
not have nailed that anymore, especially because of the redesign. That's really elevated it for me. So if I was to rate it, it would probably be 5 out of 10 easily. It's a perfectly serviceable film. If you've got kids, they'll love it. There's a few kids that won't love it. They've got fart jokes and floss dances and Sonic, and that'll make them more than happy. But as an adult, I kind of wanted a bit more, and I didn't get it. So you could always make the argument, oh, but it's a kids movie, and that is something I could discuss like for another hour. That
I hate that argument. I hate
Yeah,
that
it's
argument
like,
so much. That's not an excuse. It's
could you
like you can have that as a thing, but not as a overall arching thing of, oh, it's a kids movie. And that does, just because it's a kids movie doesn't mean that there aren't going to be children that don't either like it or feel like they're being cheated out of an experience just as much as an adult would be. Like, not all kids are the same, even if we're all going based off of an average. It is such a whack excuse, because there's plenty of kids movies that transcend normal movies or whatever, right? That do just as good, if not better, that give you the feelings that you want, the story that you need, the desire that it is.
everything made by Pixar ever.
Oh yeah.
And I know that's like comparing like the top echelon of creativity to like the middle ground. And I can appreciate if people can turn their brain off with this movie. That's great. More power to you guys. Like, I wish I could just. There's nothing wrong with just enjoying a bit of entertainment just for entertainment's sake.
Right.
But my brain is just overthinks everything. So for me, I need that little more. And
No, I totally get you.
it let me down in that regard.
So
So
it's definitely understandable.
I didn't hate it.
But sorry, go ahead.
I didn't hate it, and I think people probably thought I was just going to end up absolutely like tearing this movie apart.
I did. I'm not gonna lie.
I know exactly what the tweets were like on Twitter, and I'm happy to admit that it turned out better than I expected. It was totally serviceable. The fan service made me laugh more than anything else, but that definitely shouldn't be like the foundation of your movie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I agree.
I'm just disappointed that nobody called him Sonic.
They did reference it though.
Yeah, they had the Sonic picture with the guy. Slight spoiler: the guy had a picture. He's like an old like homeless guy. And it was like the really crappy sketch of Sonic, and he should have used it. It would have been funny if he'd actually used the name there or something.
I feel like that's a large part of if not the entire reason why my opinion differs so much to yours, Michael. Because I absolutely have the ability to just go, I'm going to see a Sonic movie. and I just sit there for an hour and a half. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm almost 30, but my sense of humor can be so childish at times.
I have watched your streams. That is very true.
Don't get me wrong, I'm tired of fart jokes, and I don't necessarily like anything that's particularly slapstick, but I love the feeling of being made feel like a kid again. So this definitely appealed to me in that respect. And as I say, I do make an effort to sort of manage my expectations when I can. Not that anyone should do that. It's just what I prefer to do because I like to enjoy these kinds of things as much as I can. I try not to be over critical of stuff like this because I'm like, it's a Sonic movie, you know. I know that's kind of baseless, but it's just how I look at it. If I can laugh at it for 90 minutes, I'm good to go.
Right, no, definitely.
More power to you, Pixie. I wish I could shut my brain off and just enjoy something as it is. I do think this would be a good time to get into spoiler territory and maybe discuss a few of the story elements in a little more detail.
Definitely.
Sure.
For some reason, the spoiler warning is under the banner instead of over it. There we go. So, specifics of the movie. Would anyone like to get into specific scenes or moments that like stood out for them positively or negatively?
Yes. Why in the world does it take so bloody long for Sonic to get his shoes? They are literally iconic to his character, and I have to wait till the second half of the movie for him to get the shoes. I'm not gonna lie, I could not like stop with looking at his shoes again and again and again. Like, jeez Louise, like, why is that even a thing? Like, why am I waiting for it? Same thing with, Dr. Robotnik. Why does it take me so long for him to get to, iconic face silhouette? Like, I get what they're going for, what it's like leading up to, but my God, it's like, well, I'm just sitting here waiting for it to go. I mean, I like that he called him Eggman, whatever, because of the drones and stuff like that, and that was cool. But God, like, I know it seems like such a little thing, but it's literally part of his silhouette as a character, as Sonic, and to wait that long into it, the other part that's like really just, I don't know if it just felt really like just jutted and like out of place or whatever, was when they're traveling to San Francisco. I mean, they already have a reason while they're going there, but then that whole like thing with, how he gets the shoes from the sister of, his girlfriend or wife actually. And then that whole thing just seemed really just unnecessary. Like, I could have just, I don't know, like, it felt so, what's the word I'm looking for? It honestly felt so forced for the sake of hitting some kind of
emotional beats,
just some kind of like feeling, and it just didn't land. And it makes me sad because I like the sister. I like her as an actress. She's a really great actress. She's in a bunch of movies and TV shows that I like. So it felt like they just kind of pigeonholed her in like a one-note thing just for laughs, which weren't really funny. And then the whole getting there was just really weird. Those were probably like the biggest things where I was just like, oh man, come on, like, what are we doing? And there was a lot of yada-yadaing about stuff with him and his like power of like how, him going super fast or getting emotional or whatever. At first I was like, okay, so is he doing the spark because he's just going really fast, or because the second time we see it, it's because he's getting all emotional? So which is it? Is it because
I think
it's one?
It's supposed to be based on like how emotional he's feeling at the time. Like, he gets
right. That's what I was assuming. But the first time you see it, it's because he's emotional, but the juxtaposition is he's just going constantly and constantly around baseball field and then just lets loose. So I was like, okay, I get that. Again, suspension of disbelief. I'm supposed to just go with the yada yadas. But even after I came out of the movie, I was like, okay, that kind of like sat there for a little bit. I was like, I can look past it and just shut it off. But it was too big for me not to think about again.
If you try to think about anything in this movie, like in detail with like any sort of like logic, internal logic, the entire movie just completely falls apart. And this is highlighted no more effectively than in the what I like to call the Quicksilver ripoff scenes, where he runs around really fast. And in the X-Men movies, time doesn't stop completely. It's still progressing, albeit really slowly.
Slowly, yeah.
But when Sonic's doing this, like, time essentially stops. And if he's able to move that quickly, the whole fucking... Sorry, excuse my language. I actually shouldn't be cursing because this is on family friendly. The whole darn plot just falls apart. Why couldn't he have just climbed up the building? Why couldn't he have just run up the building, for instance, where the rings are being held? He could have just...
That is literally the same thing I said. I was like, why are we going up the elevator? I was like, you're Sonic. You can go fast. Why aren't you just running up the building?
Yeah, but see, that's the thing, Davis. That's the one point where they make the exception. He's literally looking at the rockets just standing there and doing the thing. Boom, 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 boom. While they're not even moving, yet somehow Robotnik is still able to move his finger. There's no consistency whatsoever. Yeah. And you have to suspend your disbelief to like enjoy this film. You have to just accept that this is dumb. He's ridiculously fast and just run with it. Like, no pun intended. I did enjoy the scene with the shoes. That may have gotten a bit of emotion out of me. I was like, oh, that's really kind of sweet.
Cute. It felt like something. It just takes too long to get there.
Yeah, definitely.
See, I liked the moment. I thought, okay, this is nice, but I didn't have the same reaction because if I remember correctly, it was either in a TV spot or a version of the trailer. I don't remember, but it was somewhere. So I knew it was coming. And I kind of agree with Davis. I did think to myself, okay, she's given him a pair of shoes, but at no point is it explained why these are more superior to the shoes that he had previously.
Here's the thing. He's probably been wearing those shoes for the last 10 years. So they're worn down like from 10 years of use. So it's not that they're superior. It's just that they're new.
Yeah,
but again, that's what I thought about it. If you actually wanted to think about the speeds he's going at, those shoes would have been run out in 5 seconds.
True.
He went from the car to the ocean in like 2 seconds. So literally, what is his actual speed? It's completely back and forth throughout the whole film. There was once. Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. I at least like that they explained why he couldn't just zip off to San Francisco himself.
That was funny, getting tranquilized.
I can't do this by myself. I need you to sort of hold my hand through it. I like that because by that logic, he should just be there and back in like 10 seconds, but he wasn't, which I at least appreciated. At least they were able to justify that. But that whole premise didn't seem to line up throughout the film.
Yeah.
Caldrick says, with the speed he's running at, he should ignite our atmosphere and drench our planet in flames. That would have been a very different film, Caldrick, than the one that we got.
Definitely.
Davis says, I'm not sure how if the pile of shoes remained, but in the first trailer he had a pair of worn out shoes. I have to fully admit, until she changed those shoes, I didn't even notice that like the shoes he was wearing were like any different from his normal ones.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone but
I'm
me
crazy.
wish that we had seen more of later Robotnik?
Yes.
Yes.
The Mushroom Planet Robotnik. Yeah.
But having now knowing that they're at least going to make an effort to, present us with a sequel, I'm willing to forgive it.
And
Because
there's
if
definitely
they,
going to be a sequel. Yeah.
yeah, I am extremely hopeful, and I feel like that's another reason why I'm kind of forgiving of this movie in a lot of aspects, because I'm like, okay, I didn't get what I wanted here, but I'm at least hoping that, as you said, they build on the world of Sonic and the other characters, like Tails, for example. I at least hope that they build on that next
We will be
time.
getting to Tails, don't worry. When he had the giant mustache and the bald head and the suit, and his voice actually changed to the
Yeah.
point where it sounds like he had actually like watched
Yeah.
content with Robotnik, and it was perfect. You should have given me that giant mustached bald dude throughout the whole film. I would have gladly taken. Can you imagine this idiocy down here? This idiocy with that look.
Yeah.
That would have been a beautiful thing.
I feel like in hindsight, especially when it comes to Robotnik, I'm kind of treating this like an origin movie.
That's what it is essentially. It is an origin
Yeah.
movie.
So, like I said, I'm hopeful that they definitely build on his character next time, because we need to see more of that.
Any particular other scenes you want to highlight? There's one or two more I'd like to highlight myself, unless you have some more you would like to point out.
Not particularly.
Chevy?
No, those were pretty much my biggest like.
You mentioned the sister. What the hell was up with the sister?
I don't know. It's just pointless.
It's her doing it sucks because, like I said, I love her so much. She's such a good actress, and I feel like they just went and wanted to make her, a stereotypical like angry black woman character for the sake of it, because they are in an interracial relationship. At least that's what it felt like to me, what it presented. If the movie wasn't going for that, you did a terrible job of not going for that, because that's exactly what I felt, and it just felt uncomfortable, like just like it was just like
zero explanation for why she doesn't like this guy. Like he's presented as the most caring, considerate, loving man on the planet, bar none, and she still doesn't like him. It's like, why?
It's definitely the one scene or portion of the movie that dragged on.
Yeah,
for me.
she served no purpose in that film whatsoever, and the actress
she's
herself
such a
did a
good
great
actress.
job of what she was given.
Oh yeah.
But it doesn't serve any like benefit to the plot.
It doesn't. I feel like it was just there for just for them to hit whatever point they were trying to make, which wasn't made. So it just made it really. I just made it really uncomfortable. I was just like, oh, can we please be done with this already?
It almost felt like, despite, the movie clocked in at an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And despite that, the whole segment just felt like a buffer for runtime to me. Because if you cut that entire segment out, you're losing, maybe 10 minutes?
It would have been 10 minutes easily, yeah.
Yeah. That's what it felt like to me. Okay, we got to stretch this out a little bit longer than 90 minutes. What can we do? It just didn't make sense.
I think they'd used up their Sonic does things quickly jokes ratio at that point, so they had to be like, what else can we do?
Yeah, right.
Or maybe it was even an excuse to introduce her daughter and build on that connection with Sonic and the shoes. I don't know, but it just, didn't like it.
As a classic Sonic fan who's like one of my favorite video games of all time is Sonic 3 and Knuckles, what the hell was with the evil echidnas?
Yeah, that was so That was the funny part about that, is that I looked at it and I'm like, oh look, it's a whole bunch of Knuckles.
It
And
took
he's
me a
like, wait,
minute.
what?
I'm convinced one of them was Knuckles because
That's like my headcanon that I'm like, one of them.
Yeah,
no,
has to
there's
be
one of them
Knuckles.
that's like very red and it's done from an angle and you see the red spikes specifically. And I have a feeling that is Knuckles, and he's going to be like the older. If they do a sequel, he's going to get back there, or they're going to meet him, and he's going to be like older and angrier and have a grudge. And Sonic, Robotnik, is going to team up with him to try and take out Sonic, and then eventually Knuckles will understand the right. There we go. There's the sequel. I've just written the sequel, guys. Give me a job.
There you go. There you go.
Speaking. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know. Were you going to lead off into the end of the movie?
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of sequels, what did you guys, especially you guys in the chat right now, what did you think of the mid-credit sequence?
I loved it. I really did, because that's another criticism of the movie. I know it was an origin story and it was all about Sonic, but as a fan, there's so many other characters that are just as awesome. So I was really happy to get that confirmation on, yes, we're aware that this is a thing. We're not going to completely ignore it. We're going to build on it. We know that's what you want. I physically punched the air. I was a kid. I loved it.
My audience clapped when that came on.
Yeah,
they were like,
same.
yeah, good job, guys.
Yeah, my
There-
whole audience was doing the same thing. I know it sounds so cliche, but yeah, my husband and I called it. Like, once the credit popped up, I looked at the silhouette real fast, and I'm like, oh, I was like, here we go, there goes Miles, and then we both looked up, and then boom, he there, and I was like, damn. I was like, that's the movie I'd rather be watching, because I love.
You have to
as
admit,
much as
though,
I love, like,
you have to
I love
admit, though,
these
Chevy, that scene totally like broke down your cynical heart for at least a few seconds.
Oh, it did. I was like,
Yeah.
oh yay, it's Miles. I love Miles. Yeah, like I said, I know. So it might seem to some people that I'm just like shitting on it, just like,
Not
oh,
at
there's
all.
no redeeming quality. But it's just, I don't know. There's so much more it could have been, you know. And I think that's the part where it's like, man, you really, you know, could have done a little more with it, even if you don't make it longer. But there's things you could have tightened up, things that you could have just did a little yada yada to make it, you know, feel a little bit more together. Like, I like that the beginning just kind of went through his whole thing quickly, but I dislike that it took us so long for him to tell us, oh yeah, I have to think about the place, right? You get told that when he says the word San Francisco and he drops the ring, and you know,
Yeah, that
it
surprised
drops
me.
there.
Like, it didn't seem to.
I
They
was
didn't
like-
seem to suggest that beforehand.
Yeah, I was like, okay, wait, it looked like it was just like a randomization. So now you're telling me he has to think about it. So does that mean, are we working with like infinite universes of just like, oh, so whatever I think about, it's just gonna happen?
Yeah.
Because if that was the case, why would you go to some place like crappy, like the Mushroom Planet, versus somewhere that you'd want to be?
Exactly,
But again, you know, that's one of those things where, yeah, if you go a little too deep into thinking about it, it all starts to fall apart. And then at that point, you're just like, I'm being.
It's a fun
old
movie
man.
as long as you don't think about it too much.
yeah, for sure.
Can I just say while we're here, also, yeah, love the Tails scene. That's whatever I thought about the movie as a middle of the road kind of film. Tails scene totally got a big smile out of me. I love this. Has anyone considered that there was maybe a proto Tails design before they like cartoonified Sonic? That maybe there was a more human looking Tails.
There's a
And-
whole bunch of stuff on Reddit like that of talking about what that might have been if they actually did a proto of him, and they have the they use a fake image of what is it? I think that one Muppet
Yeah,
like the Mr. Fantastic movie, the Mr. Fantastic Fox.
Oh,
Yeah.
He's like all like super jacked.
It's super disturbing. Don't Google it. I feel like you're already looking for it, Pixie. Don't.
I will be.
Don't.
I will be.
So bad.
You will
I
not
should've
sleep
tried
tonight. Yeah.
So bad.
But as I said, like that was the credit scene was definitely. If I had any problem with the movie, that's definitely what redeemed it for me because, with the history of video game movies, they've been rubbish up until now. So I'm at least excited about the possibility on expanding on that universe. I'm excited to see where they go with it.
Right.
Are you really going to make me get into the subject of Detective Pikachu?
I have thoughts on Detective Pikachu if you want to.
Yeah, I love how you say I have thoughts without emphasizing. Are they good or bad?
Middle of the road, to be honest. I really enjoyed it, but I definitely had one overarching criticism of the movie.
Is that criticism called Ryan Reynolds?
No, not at all.
Okay. You're saved then. Okay.
I love Detective Pikachu, but my main issue with it was it starts out as something, and like the first act and the second act are entirely different. It starts off as this really moody, noir type detective film that I really liked. I loved the aesthetic, I loved the tone, and then gradually that slips away and it just becomes a stereotypical like superhero / Pokemon movie where Mewtwo is there to cause havoc, and I don't know, they didn't gel very well for me.
What about yourself, Chevy? Did you like Detective Pikachu?
I liked it enough, but there was not enough. So weird. It's not enough for me. It was just like not enough Pokemon for what I had.
Oh,
Like
definitely can't agree with you there.
Like everything was there. Like like it's there, but it's all just so quick. And I get that. And I like, as much as I like Pikachu and everything, I was never like super huge on like the whole like thing on it. Like I wasn't really sold on it for me. I don't hate that it was Ryan Reynolds, but I feel like it's the Jim Carrey problem where you have someone that's just so big that it's not Ryan Reynolds doing Pikachu, it's Pikachu as Ryan Reynolds. So then it just kind of takes away from it.
Yeah.
You know, like it just it pushes me out of it. It was fine, but I definitely agree with Pixie that I like that beginning of that movie. The aesthetic, the way things are filmed, the way that it's moody, dark, very noir, very detective of old. And then we get into like just not as bad, but then we get into Michael Bay and like very explosion-y and very like everything's going to hell in a handbasket kind of deal. And I'm just like, wait, what happened to the nuance that we had, the first 40 minutes? We took off with it, and it doesn't seem like it fits. It feels like they just went that way because, again, they wanted to hit a specific quota, or they wanted to hit, we want to have Mewtwo in this, so we're gonna put him in somewhere, whether it makes sense in the flow of the movie or the pace of the movie, we're gonna put it in here because that's what we need to do. And if it doesn't work, well, oh well, too bad. Everything else it'll be fine. And I mean, it was. And I think for this film, I have a really it's like a double-sided coin as far as like, I know people are really excited that it's making money and stuff like that. And, it's already being like titled like, best grossing like video game movie.
It's the best grossing video game movie
and
ever, yeah.
blah, 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 and all this other stuff. I hate using that as a measurement because just because a movie makes money does not mean that it's a quality product, regardless of whether or not, because a lot of times now it's always, I get that after like Avatar, that became the thing that every movie studio and exec wanted to shoot for was, making best domestic, next box office, next international, whatever. There's so many little things at play that I feel like because of Sonic fans just wanting to see it, they were gonna make it sell regardless of whether it was good or bad. I'm glad that it is, because it makes me feel at least vindicated, the fact that all the people that talked crap, and said they weren't going to watch it because it looked terrible or whatever, and then right, they listened to you, they did what you wanted, and then you still don't go support it, right? Then what was the point of complaining just for the sake of complaining? Then if that was the case, you really could have just kept it to yourself.
People were
you
going
didn't
to go
make such a granted, but I think people were going to go watch it regardless. It was going to be one of those movies that was going to be polarizing, where you were going to go hate watch it because you wanted to be like, Sonic sucks.
It's Sonic.
It's one of those things where I don't think you could have gotten away with it. So I'm not surprised, but
it's Sonic. It was going to sell regardless. He's had some really atrocious games the last couple of years.
Oh God!
Even if they still sell.
Honestly, I can only speak for myself, and not everyone may believe me on this, but I can say without a doubt that I had no intention of seeing it whenever we had that original trailer. And to be honest, the redesign is awesome, but the second trailer was something completely different to me. If you put aside the redesign and put aside your personal opinions on the film and consider the tone and the editing, even something as simple as the lack of Gangster Paradise in the trailer.
Yeah. What was that about?
Exactly. Was enough.
Yeah, the music change was definitely for the better.
Exactly. So that was enough. They really seemed to, the second time around, really homed in on the character of Sonic and what makes him likable, as opposed to really trying to sell the movie as a whole. But that definitely grabbed me, because the first time around I was like, what is this? It literally, especially now watching it back, it feels like some sort of fever dream. Like it's a completely different.
It was some sort of fever dream, and it's some sort of worldwide fever dream suffered by everybody, and by the people who had to sit down and actually animate it. Poor guys having to look at that every day.
It just elicited.
Caldrick, sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. No, it just elicited such a completely different feeling for me. Because,
right,
I don't know, there was just it felt more upbeat, more positive, more, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but there was definitely a different tone with the second one for sure.
I feel like that is probably a perfect place to round us off for this evening. Hey there folks, if you got this far, then it means you actually got to the end of the video, so congratulations. If you enjoyed what you watched here today, please do consider dropping us a follow on Twitter, Twitch and Instagram. They're all at no word count, so it should be easy to find. And we're also on YouTube. If you search for no word count, we should be one of the top results. You can support the channel by dropping a subscription on the Twitch for $4.99 a month, and that will give you the opportunity to influence further shows, topics, that kind of thing, community questions, and it helps us build up the channel and make things even better. Take care of yourselves. Stay beautiful.